Hey there, folks. So welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we are finally going to be talking about the newest album from Pusha-T, Daytona. But I have to admit, this is one of those reviews where I'm actually incredibly grateful I didn't jump the gun and review this early, if only because it feels like this week for Pusha T might be one of the most tumultuous for hip-hop in 2018. And even now, it feels like we're only joining the story in progress. And indeed, there's a part of me that just wants to focus on that beef with Drake. How Drake seemed to think that he could put away Pusha T's career with Duppy Freestyle like he had with Meek Mill 3 years ago, only to put Pusha T's fiance's name on wax, and for Pusha T to declare all bets were off with the story of Adidon, which might just join Jay-Z's Super Ugly in the realms of diss tracks that seem to step over the line. And yet for me, there is a part of me that feels like Drake brought this on himself and has been pushing this line with far too many people for far too long. And not only did Pusha T seem fully aware of the gravity of his references on that song, the framing of it all was highlighting the twisted cycle of abandonment that Drake was perpetuating from his own father, be it his closest producer or the previously unrevealed son. For somebody of principles, even the warped code of bleak, nihilistic pragmatism that Pusha T seems to adhere to, that's a much higher crime in his eyes, and he wants to exact some real vengeance. And yet it already seems like some people are forgetting how the release of Daytona had been mired in some controversy of its own, with Kanye West operating as sole producer, yanking the album art to replace it with a photograph of Whitney Houston's drug-filled bathroom for a sum of $85,000. And that's before you get the lingering question whether just 7 songs from Pusha T would be enough. Now, granted, I did just cover Minor Threat's Out of Step on Resonators less than a week ago, and that was about as long with 9 tracks and was damn near a classic, but 7 songs meant Pusha T had no room for error or dead weight. And while the critical acclaim was really damn encouraging for me, after all, an album is just a construct, it could be as long or short as we want, I was kind of cautious, especially as it seemed like this could be the abortive substitution for the long-delayed King Push. But hey, that didn't mean it couldn't be good or even great, right? Well, you know, I was a lot more conflicted on this project than I thought I would be, and because of its length, it was easy to listen to it 4 or 6 times on repeat without even me noticing, particularly in how seamlessly this album flows together, but also because it's got this feeling of a ruthless, single-minded efficiency both in its flexing and its barbed warnings. And as such, I can easily see a project like this branded as lacking dimension from some critics until you start digging in between the lines, and realize that at least some of Pusha T's intentions are to narrow the focus, both for himself and for his audience, and oh man, he reaped the rewards of that because this is pretty damn great. And that narrowing of focus is something that deserves attention right out of the gate, because Pusha T knows exactly how skilled of an MC he is and how his clout flaunts the quick flashiness of most modern trap MCs. He could take as long as he wants to drop a record and he would still have hype behind it, especially considering that he's jettisoned any attempt at commercial appeal that held back a lot of songs on My Name Is My Name. And thus, while it is somewhat paradoxical that while Pusha T's got all the time in the world, his structure of writing is much more thorny and knotted than ever before. He's always been a great rapper with a penchant for a lot of detail and vivid storytelling, but you can tell that he's compressing everything down as tight as it possibly could. Or to quote him on Come Bad Baby, where he points at all the diamonds on his watch, all this shit came from pressure. Not just referring to the high stakes of the drug trade and the diamonds in his watch, but also his own focus on the tightest rhymes possible with the limited time that he's been given. And indeed, time and watches, they're actually a running motif throughout this record beyond just aimless flexing. Where on Hard Piano, he references how many new rappers have ruined Patek watches, not just for the brand, but the efficiency of delivering something really short and effective, given their own short careers, and now Pusha T must focus more on the art as well. It makes sense that a line earlier on that song he references Andy Warhol, an artist with pieces like Empire also played fast and loose with the whole concept of time. But really, if you're coming to a Pusha T record, you're coming for that top quality bragging, the caustic bars, and the sort of haunted cocaine rap that's always given his material a bite that so much modern trap material just does not have. The Migos wish they could bite this hard, and a lot of that is central to the framing. Now don't get him twisted, Pusha T's amassed a considerable fortune, and he will talk about it, but he's also playing a higher class of criminal, and he's much more aware of the lingering consequences of his actions, both in real life and on his psyche. To briefly reference the story of Adidon, on. It's why he's aware and comfortable with going into hell with Drake and the foulness of his content and bars, and why the danger of his life has always colored a lot of the bragging on Daytona, making it seem far more dark. Hell, the second verse of If You Know, You Know, that's a prime example. He hasn't succumbed to the larger, brighter corporate culture less out of choice and more because he really can't. The street scars, they run too deep on his psyche. And while many would just flex and celebrate their wealth, or more likely that of others, he just preferred to quietly accumulate it. He wasn't there when Meech brought the tigers in, but earning the stripes and the criminal time to become that tiger himself, and just as lethal. And as such, there's nothing garish about his flexing on the games we play, knowing that he can be richer than everybody else while wearing no jewelry, but also because he knows the human consequences of what he has done to get to that point, referencing being paralyzed at the sight of drug mummies, cocaine smuggled in with corpses. And this isn't conscious rap. It's not intended to be. He's doing some bleak and dark things, and with the ragged framing, it colors Rick Ross's verse on hard piano, as he now seeks an artistic respect that's never attained beyond the wealth which does not satisfy him in the same way, or the genuine grief that colors Push's delivery on Santeria, where he seeks bloody, righteous vengeance in the face of his friend Devon Pickett's murder. He might coax the imagery through Latin mafioso production, more on this in a little bit, but it's not garish melodrama so much as is it a brutal and bleak reality for him. And it's a credit to Pusha T's performance that he can wring those deeper emotions out of his nasal snarl, and that grief still comes through. There's emotionality to these songs, and thus, of course, it kind of makes sense he has seething contempt for Drake on Infrared, baiting a trap in the ghostwriting charges and the corrupted mess of Young Money's broken family, which adds another layer of steel to his family indictments, and the story of Adidon just flies completely contrary to any of his principles. And of course, the other side of that family conversation is the elephant in the room, and given the current political allegiance, it seems like that metaphor now works on multiple levels, and that elephant is named Kanye West. And let me give Kanye the credit where it is due. The production on this album is absolutely excellent. The echoing vocal samples on If You Know, You Know might not have immediately gripped me in the same way, especially near the back half of the song, but against the filthy trumpet and warbling guitar of the games we play, and especially that deeper swell of melody against the distant keys, tapping groove, and the incredibly raw hook from the world-famous Tony Williams on hard piano, it really won me over. And when it's followed by George Jackson's slightly diced but soulful sampled hook on Comeback Baby, and the gothic chorus from 070 Shake on Santeria, it can't but make the otherwise pretty minimalist trap grind pretty damn harrowing, even as the song really builds up more on Santeria near the back half. But then Kanye has to hop on a second verse of What Would Meek Do? And I kinda have to sympathize with Pusha T here. He tried to get Meek Mill, and he got Kanye referencing his Make America Great Again had his cheap provocateur pass. And the frustrating thing is that from a technical standpoint, Kanye's verse actually winds up being pretty decent, but he's clear that he's reveling in his cheap provocation, when in reality, any of that symbolism that he's using is winding up being co-opted by the wrong audience, even despite Push's charitably nihilistic framing and taking the devil's path, possibly even implying it for Kanye. Hell, despite Kanye now thinking he's too complex for ComplexCon, he then references $1 Million Baby, comparing it to himself, perhaps forgetting that the titular character broke her neck in a bout and wound up euthanized by her mentor, the sort of unsettling subtext and framing of which I'm not quite sure Kanye considered in his boast there, but I get the disturbing sense that Pusha T might have. Interesting. But regardless of that, this is a small blemish on a great album, netting a very strong 8 out of 10 from me, definitely a recommendation. Now, I'll freely admit that Daytona is not for everyone, especially when you dig below the surface. More lessons reveal the sort of increasing ugliness beneath the sort of haunted framing and raw delivery that gets under your skin in a really unsettling, brutal way. But if I'm going to listen to this brand of hip-hop, Pusha T delivers some of the best. And if Drake thinks that he can cool off this surgical summer, something gives me the feeling it's only just getting started, so stay tuned for more of that. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. Like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Yeah, this record's great. You want to buy it, links down there below. Got the poll up there. I imagine you all probably agree with me that this album's great, so there's your opportunity to prove it. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. If you guys want to get involved in my scheduling process, link to my Patreon is right over there, where 3 times a week you guys get to vote for my schedule, and once a week for the higher tier contributors, you guys get to add albums, movies, or even a top 10 list to that schedule. If you want to see the schedule, it's on my Instagram, down there below. Happy to have you guys help on board and make this channel something a little bigger. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.